How many current elders do we have in here? Magnificent. How many aspiring elders do we have? Yes, I see some hands going up. You know, that's one thing that's important. Sometimes we need to provide leadership training opportunities, not only for ourselves, but for the aspiring leaders. And if we have a deacon seminar, then we're helping them not only to do their current job, but to do a future job. Or if we talk about effective elders, how do they get that training? How about you got the training on the job, right? On the job. So maybe we can onboard them a little different and provide some education and some experiences that will help them get out of the gate a little sooner, maybe make the job a little easier, help them to be more effective. So if you're interested in any of that, you might want to snap a picture and of some of this information. You can contact me. There's also a sheet up here. Take your phone, shoot a picture of this. This is a elder training opportunity. As go the shepherds, so go the sheep. Brother Ivan Stewart has begun this, and you know about his great work in evangelism, and this is another very good opportunity. So hope you'll take a look at that. Leadership, creating a better future through the use of positive influence. I think that's what we're talking about. You have to create it. It doesn't happen all by itself. It's future focused, but it's focused on a better future, because there are some leaders like a Hitler who didn't make the lives of the German people better as a result of his being at the head. So we want to do it, but we need to do it through ethical or positive influence, not through coercion, not through, what does Peter say, not through lording. Even though we have definitely authority to guide the affairs of the church, the fact is that it is done primarily, mostly through our example, our teaching, our exhortation. And so we want to create this better future through the use of positive influence. As we think about this process, my emphasis in teaching the Effective Elders Seminar. By the way, you're guinea pigs. I've taught this one time over at Castle Rock, Colorado, with Matthew Moran. But we're just rolling some stuff out. But the emphasis is on the people-centered aspects of leadership. I know we need organization as leaders. We need organizational clarity, and we need organizational structure to be effective in doing our jobs. But I think the area we need the most help in is in the work of helping people grow. Coming alongside people as men who are apt to teach from your life experience, from your lifetime of study in God's Word, to come alongside people and help them live abundant lives. Because that's why Jesus came, that we might have life eternally, but we might also have abundant life. Elders are abundant life trainers. That's what elders are in my estimation. We're dealing with people oftentimes who are struggling. Why do some people chronically fail? They're very frustrated. They're kind of discouraged, disappointed. Well, because they don't realize their potential. Created in the image of God and gifted by God for greatness. We heard about that. We want to shine like stars. God made us to be stars. Because they don't trust in God's power. Ephesians 1:19, the greatness, the exceeding greatness of God's power that is available to us. They don't choose a way forward, because you have to decide what it is you want and where you're going to invest your life. What is my ability? What is my skill set? What is my passion? And they don't choose. They need to choose. They don't create a clear plan. If I'm going somewhere, I need a path. And so it doesn't have to be extraordinary, but it just needs to be practical. I need to have some kind of path. They don't make ample preparation. They fly by the seat of their pants and kind of hope things will just work out. They do not commit to persevere, because in accomplishing anything worthwhile, you're going to have setbacks, aren't you? That's a part of the process. You know that as an elder. And so we need to help them recognize the importance of commitment and persistence, steadfastness. The last thing on the list is a lot of people just don't want to ask for help. God has created this ecosystem for success, hasn't He? All kinds of people and resources available to them. Elders are one of the most underutilized resources that God has gifted the church with, readily available to pray with people and to plan with people, to problem solve with people, and yet they don't take advantage of it. And God's made it available for free. So they need to become more comfortable asking for help in their life because God wants to help them. You know, and this is where elders enter the picture. We come alongside people to help them and to bless them and to move forward. Let's see here. All right, when I talk about effective elders, typically I'm talking about a few things. I've got 3 sessions here. The first one is about the shepherd's heart. Doesn't it all come from the heart? Technical capacities, what difference does that make if our hearts aren't right? David was a man after the heart of God. So I think that's the place to begin. In fact, when you look at the different terms for a leader in the Lord's church, we have elder, a man of wisdom and evaluated life experience. We have a bishop, an overseer who helps to manage the collective affairs of the church as well as watching over the souls of individuals. But then you've got this word, this term shepherd. And it just seems to me that that word connects with people's hearts in a very special way. That maybe that's a word for our time. As we restore New Testament Christianity, I don't know that we need any quota of use of terminologies, but I think it's just a really good word that connects with people. So we talk about the heart of a shepherd, and then the things we're going to emphasize today, we're going to talk about the eyes of a shepherd. That's vision. We're going to talk about the ears of a shepherd, one of the greatest ministry tools we have, our ears. You think Jesus was a great listener? Absolutely. And we need to be great listeners. Then we're going to talk about the voice of a shepherd. Because his sheep hear his voice, they ought to know our voice, shouldn't they? We need a relationship with them where they know us as not just authority figures, but as hopeful, caring friends. Isn't that a wonderful picture that that's the way folks look at elders in the Lord's church? And we're going to provide a simple coaching method in order to do that. I hope will be helpful. But we're going to start talking about vision. Vision is about seeing the future before it arrives. I believe to a certain extent, I'm not talking about every eventuality, but to a certain extent that's true. In the book of Hebrews, in the 11th chapter, it says that as it talks about faith, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. It's not seen, but do you see it? You see things that aren't, but you realize they can be. You see things that you're hoping for the lives of children in your congregation, things that you're hoping for couples in your congregation. And by faith, you see what can be, and then you have the opportunity to help that become reality. We're in the hope fulfillment business. That's what we're trying to do. So it's about seeing the future before it arrives. It's about fashioning the future because we create a better future through the use of our positive influence. Where do we fashion the future? In our minds and in our hearts. The first receptacle of reality is the human mind and the human heart. You know, we look at these great corporations. I think about Chick-fil-A. That's a great corporation. And when we think about it, he started with a diner not far from the airport in Atlanta, Georgia, part of Atlanta, a suburb of Atlanta. And then we look at this multi-billion-dollar company today. But where did it all start? It's an idea that came to fruition. And we can have dreams. You have to have a dream before you can have a dream come true. Amen? So we need to be thinking and fashioning that future in our minds. I believe it's Andy Stanley. He has a book out called Visioneering. Do you like that term, visioneering? It says that vision is this cross between epiphany and engineering. So it involves a few things. Flashes of insight. Where do you get your best ideas? Usually I'm laying in bed, I wake my wife up, I get my pen, I'm writing down some notes. Maybe it's in the shower, maybe it's while I'm driving. But you have these flashes of insight, but it's also the science of achievement. So we have these strokes of brilliance, but it's going to take specialized leadership skills to execute it. It's a spark of genius, but it's sweat, isn't it? Blood, sweat, and tears. That's church work. It's a lot of grit, extreme determination, and it's the sweat of disciplined thinking. When you have vision, what's going to make that vision succeed? The sweat of disciplined thinking. You keep thinking about it. It marinates in your mind. And the details begin to become clearer and clearer because you won't let it go. Because you have this dream, you have this vision. And by the way, it's one thing to have a vision. It's another thing to hold a vision. And you see, that's what the congregation is counting on you to do. You are the protectors and the promoters of the vision of that congregation. And so when you're making decisions, you don't make decisions based on just who spoke to you last, management by exception, let's quiet the squeaky wheel. How do you lead? You lead this way. What's our vision? Every decision, what do you think about? Our vision. And when we operate that way, good things can happen. There's a lot of different strategic components of leadership. You have mission. Mission is the overarching purpose. It's kind of like the umbrella. Everything needs to come under the mission. And then you have your values. What do values do? They guide your choices, and they protect your vision. They protect your character and your integrity. They protect everything that is precious to you. Then we have vision. Vision is the localized application of your mission. What does that look like here? And then we have our goals. These are chunks of vision. These are pieces, milestones that have to be accomplished if we're going to get there. So we can lay that out. And then we have to have our strategies, the specific steps that make those dreams come true. Now, mission, when I think about the mission of the church, I think about the Great Commandment. Because that covers everything, doesn't it? Let everything you do be done in love, Paul says. That covers everything. Love the lost, that's evangelism. And we can go down the list. How does love look here? How does love meet this need? Really, you got two big pillars in the Christian faith. You've got the Great Commandment and you've got the Great Commission. Amen? The Great Commandment and the Great Commission. But the Great Commandment is the one that covers everything. Evangelism is vital, but is it everything we do? It's not everything we do. It's part of what we do. It's the most important thing we do, but it's not the only thing. The Great Commandment provides that mission. And then we come down to our vision. In Franklin, Tennessee, at the Southern Hills Church of Christ, our vision is expressed in John 10:10. John 10:10. Wrote a book about this to try and explain it. This is my first year at the congregation, so I'm teaching this in every adult class, hopefully in our teenage class, so that we can embed. This isn't a human vision. This is Jesus' vision of church. I've come that they might have life and have it abundantly. This is what Jesus wanted. Do you think then this is what elders ought to be about? That people can be saved, that's life, and that they can be sanctified, that's abundant life. That's the maturing of our lives in Christ's likeness. That's learning to live better by learning to love better. So this is the vision. Our values are faith, hope, and love. You ever heard that before somewhere? Faith, hope, and love. In 1 Corinthians 13:13, Paul says, 3 things abide, and these 3 things ought to guide. Faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these, what? Greatest of these is love. But what's he talking about, faith, hope, and love? Faith, he's talking about your thoughts. And hope, I know it's expectation, but it affects your emotions. And then love, it's talking about your actions. If we can get our thoughts and our emotions and our actions all aligned, then we're going to have integrity, we're going to have effectiveness. So we say that what we're looking at here are, number 1, sound beliefs. Is it biblical? We ask, is it biblical? And then we need to have healthy emotions. We need positive attitudes that grow out of the promises of God. So we're not going to lead by fear. We're going to lead by faith. And there's a huge difference. And then the last part is that we need caring actions. Or let's say caring relationships. Those relationships are going to be affected by our love. So what do we think? How do we feel? The expectation that comes from the promises of God. We don't let negative emotions rule us, guide us, worry and negativity, but instead we are hopeful people. We're going to follow 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 7, where we bear all things and believe all things and hope all things and endure all things. Elders are people who are able to bear all things and endure all things because they believe all things and they hope all things. So, let's go ahead and talk here about vision. Now, some of you already have created your vision statement. You may want to go back to the auditorium because this may bore you. It may not be interesting to you if you've been through that process and facilitated it. But I just want to talk about vision and the vision creation business and what it is and how we do it in our time together. You know, the next step would be talking about how we execute on that vision. But we're going to talk about vision creation. I believe that what sparks vision is discontent. You got 2 kinds of discontent. Some kinds are generative and some kinds are degenerative. Some kinds are healthy and some are unhealthy. So discontent can lead to just irritation, or can it not just light up your imagination? So what we're talking about is we need to not just be people who go about complaining, you know, why is it this way and things are awful. Not that kind of discontent. Instead, Creative discontent is the basis of all leadership, all effective leadership. We're going to process our frustrations in a more fruitful way. It is the maturing of discontent where we're saying, how could things be better? How could things be better? So that's where everything begins for us. We could talk about that a long time, but our time is very limited. Now, what's the problem? One of the greatest hindrances that we face is fear. One of the biggest problems the church faces is insecure leaders. Because if I'm an insecure leader, am I going to lead by faith or am I going to lead by fear? I'm not saying that we shouldn't be thoughtful about what's happening and consider the consequences of our actions, because we should. But there's always a problem. Anything you do, there's always going to be, anytime you have a change, it creates friction. So there's going to be some kind of unrest. But we need to be careful, because fear will let us look at every opportunity through the filter of our own ego. And so when those things come up, if I'm afraid, if this doesn't work, it's just going to reflect back on me. I'm going to feel like I'm a failure. So what's the safe thing to do? Not to do anything. So I'm just going to preserve the status quo, and it's easy to just point out why this might not be wise, and there are problems with instituting even biblical change, but in any case, that's a danger. The danger is fear. On the other hand, we have faith. In the book of Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 6, what does it tell us? Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Do you believe that's true for elders? Without faith, it is impossible to please God as an elder in the Lord's church. We must believe that He is. Do you think it feels different when you're leading, when you believe He is? He exists. He is present in our meetings. He is present in our ministries. I think life's a lot more exciting. It's a whole lot more fun. You live different when you believe in the nature of God described in Scripture, in the presence of God who will never leave us or forsake us, in the promises of God. Now, when you believe that, it's going to be exciting to serve in God's kingdom. But not only do we need to believe in our God, you need to believe in people. You need to believe in them. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is this. If you don't believe in people, please don't become an elder. Every once in a while, there's some guy who is a type A individual who knows how to drive organizational change, and very valuable, but he doesn't believe in people. Or if you believe, well, people can change, but I don't think they're going to change. We're in the people changing business. Amen. How in the world are we going to affect the positive change that we want to do if we don't have confidence in it? Our job is to believe in them more than they believe in themselves. We're going to believe for them about what life can be. And frankly, we know because of our history and what we've been through and the mistakes that we've made, we see the power of God working, and so we can then help them. Our job is to come alongside them. We've got to believe in people and the power of the gospel. What is it the power to do? It is the power to save from past sins, but it's also the power to make known to people life doesn't have to be like this. Life can be different. It can be better. When people are discouraged, they've got a flawed focus, don't they? They have problems, but they look at their problems and they internalize them. They think that they are defective. They think that things will never change. They don't think they're just having a problem in one area, but that they're just incompetent in just overall life itself. And so we have to come alongside them with faith in them to help them reframe problems and to realize that they have undeveloped potential and that they have an unlimited future if they will begin to take God at His word. But there's another kind of faith that we need, and that is faith in the future. Sometimes we go through periods where we can feel very blue, very down. We can despair. But God's people believe in a hopeful future. And I think we believe in it because we believe God's laws. In the book of Galatians, we read in chapter 6 and verses 7 through 10, "Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap." And we learn about the process. In due season we will reap if we what? If we are bold, if we are determined and consistent. We have come to learn that if we'll sow the seeds and if we'll nurture the seeds, we can create a new reality. This is God's promise to us. It's called, what we're trying to do as leaders is help people connect the dots in their life between cause and effect. Why are things like they are? Well, to a certain extent, because of choices that we've made that have created consequences. And if we want different outcomes, what do we need to do? How about sowing some different seeds? How about making some different choices? So we believe in the future. We teach children laws of the sower. I reap what I sow. God lets me choose what to sow. Good choices come from a good heart. And I must work for and wait for that harvest. So we have some laws that we teach. The law of creation, the law of causation, the law of cultivation, and the law of continuation. Hang in there. All the good stuff comes if you don't give up, if you hold on, if you believe God, if you continue to labor and go forward. So I'm just saying that if we're going to create this new future, we have this content. It needs to be creative discontent. We're going to use it in a positive and productive way to go forward. We're not going to let fear limit us and hold us back. We'll fear God, but we're not going to just live in the kind of negative fear that the Bible warns us against. And faith. Faith, what does faith do? Faith urges you to act on your dreams. Fear says, don't do it. Don't do it. The wheels may come off. Something may go wrong. The greatest compliment that you can give to God is to do something with your faith. And the greatest insult to God is to do nothing. You remember a parable about a man who did nothing because he was fearful. God says, don't go down that road. And so we think about the value of faith. I think about Jesus and his faith. He saw apostles where other people saw misfits. He saw a holy woman where other people saw a shameful adulteress. He saw in Zacchaeus a great servant, what were other people seeing? A traitor and a thief. And you just start thinking about it. Paul saw Christians where other people saw pagans. And so as we think about it, we see that we have the power through faith to envision what people can become and to create the support and the structure that's going to help them get there. We need to be like Barnabas, the son of encouragement. Elders are encouragers. And so where other people saw an enemy in Saul, he saw a great preacher and a great evangelist. That's what we need to see. That's why we need faith. Now, we have lots of different options. How many of you have a crystal ball? Did you bring your crystal ball today? Because here's what your congregation oftentimes will expect. Your congregation is going to expect you to know every social trend, every regional demographic, and you're supposed to be able to make plans and implement them flawlessly without any deviation. How's that working for you? How's that working for you? So we don't have crystal balls. But can we have a crystal clear picture of the kind of lives we want to see people live? Abundant lives. And when we begin to have that vision and hold that vision, I think we're going to really be effective. So we have options. In the congregation, you have a choice. You can support one missionary effort. You can support this one, that benevolent effort, or this one. You can have this program for children or this one. It's a choice. And you know what leaders do is they focus attention and focus resources and say, we're going to work in this area. And we're trying to find that elusive balance of what will be effective and what will create passion among our people. But if we think that we have to have perfect plans and perfect ideas, do you think that holds us back? This feeling of uncertainty creates hesitancy, and hesitancy creates inactivity. And the worst thing you can do is what? The worst thing you can do is nothing. Because change is going to happen. Change will happen. Kind of like for it to be biblical change. How about you? But here's what's going to happen. If you don't steer the change, if you don't drive the change, somebody else is going to do it. It will happen. In fact, I think it was Benjamin Franklin who said, if you're finished changing, you're finished. So we need to be lifelong learners, and we need to embrace change. I think the restoration of New Testament Christianity is embracing change. Not to go back and be mired in the past, but to rise up to the standard, the biblical standard, and to see all the good things that can be when we help people to enjoy the rule of God in their lives, the kingdom of God in their lives. So things need to change. More than diapers need to be changed in church buildings. But if I am fearful, then I am afraid of change. I don't want any kind of risk. Well, let's see that there are lots of options. If you're going to become a teacher, are there options? You can be in the public school or the private school. You can teach college or high school or elementary school. You can teach in Oklahoma or you can teach in Tennessee. And you begin to think about it, there's all kinds of choices. Which one's right? If you want to be a farmer, you're going to grow corn or raise cows. If you're going to raise cows, what are you going to do? Well, is it going to be Holsteins or is it going to be heifers? I mean, there are all kinds of options, and God gives us the ability to make some choices. And you're in charge. You want to be contextually and relationally open. You want to listen to people and let them be part of this process. But in the end, it's just a choice. Success is really going to have more to do with what you do with that choice than the choice itself. So when we look at matters of judgment, let's understand that. I'm going to skip along here. Let me say something about the focus that we ought to have on people as we are leaders in the Lord's church. How many church buildings did Jesus build? Now, I'm not anti-church building. I believe we need safe facilities. I think we need sufficient facilities. And I think building can encourage people. It will reflect faith and it will affect faith. Nehemiah used a building project to spark growth, didn't he? He saw a way. I don't think it was just about the wall. Do you think it was just about the wall? What was he trying to do? Convince the people of what they were capable of with the power of God supporting them, and all of the things that needed to happen in changing for the better would grow out of that. So I'm not anti-building, but can we spend too much time on sanctuaries instead of servants? Can we spend more time decorating the foyer than equipping the saints? Yes. So, am I against painting? Am I against, I love aesthetic beauty. I think it's important. There's a place where maybe it's too much. That's a matter of judgment. Doesn't have to be lavish, but I think I like attractive facilities. I do. But I understand this. It's a lot easier to build a building than to build people. And so sometimes we end up, when we have a vision, our vision immediately goes to brick and mortar, because we don't know what to do. I want us to reinvest in people. I'm not saying you have a building project, shelve it. I'm saying maybe there's somebody else who can handle that for you. I'm not saying that you're going to withdraw from all accountability, but there's some capable people, and then you can reinvest in growing godly families, responsible children, thriving marriages. That needs to be the vision that drives us most of all. You know, when you become preoccupied with the building, were the Israelites preoccupied with the building? What did God let happen to that building? And instead he said, this will be my temple, the heart of my people. The heart of my people. And if that was what God wanted to use as the center of the kingdom, maybe that's a good place for us to work as well. Instead of just writing on stone, we write on hearts. God wrote on hearts. How about we write on hearts? Now, when you think about this people focus, I think about Jesus and the Sermon on the Mount. When you look at the Beatitudes, you're beginning to understand the ministry of Jesus and what he wanted for people to know and to do to have more abundant lives. When you look at the Apostle Paul and you read in Galatians 5:22 and 23 about the fruit of the Spirit, then you're beginning to really understand the ministry of Paul. When you go to 2 Peter in chapter 1 and verses 5 through 11, and Paul talks about adding to our faith and describes many virtues, you're beginning to understand the dream and the vision of Peter. When you read the 10 Commandments, you're beginning to understand Moses wasn't merely trying to get people from point A to point B. He was also taking them on a spiritual journey so that they would know what people who were holy and dedicated to God, what their lives ought to look like. What difference would it make if they went from point A to point B if they were still caught up in idolatry? Just think about this. What is it that a lot of the Israelites thought was the problem as they were traveling through the wilderness? What did they think the problem was? The average person. Some of them thought it was food. Some of them thought it was serpents. Here's the problem. It's those armies that we're having to face. Were the enemies of Israel going to keep them out of the land of promise? Let me just ask you that. What was going to keep them out of the land of promise? It was the hardness of their hearts. It was the unbelief. Or you think about Jesus coming to Palestine or coming to God's people from heaven to earth here in Judea and in Samaria and in Galilee. And as he comes, what was the biggest problem they faced? Some people thought it was the occupying armies of Rome, didn't they? What did they want Jesus to do? Hold political rallies. That's what they wanted. They wanted a quick, easy, painless kind of change that would come from the leader, when what they needed was internal change. Not external change, internal change. Could the armies of Rome keep them out of heaven? No. But hypocrisy could. Hypocrisy could. And so we need to begin to understand what this job is. We want vision, a people-centered vision, a vision informed by faith. Without vision, people perish, or that is, without revelation, people perish, because they cast off restraint. What happens when the leaders of the church do not have biblically informed visions? Biblically informed visions. I think that as elders, the more the Word of Christ dwells in you richly, the more you care about people, the more you contemplate the future, you see things. You see things. And they capture your heart. And you can't forget them. And they drive your behaviors and your choices. And so we need to understand with these biblically informed visions that we can help to produce, to create a better future through the use of positive influence. What's going to happen without vision? Aimlessness, like the Israelites wandering in the wilderness. What's going to happen? Going to fuss and fight instead of be united. People are going to get political, and they're going to have their little coalitions in the church, and a lot of things are going to happen. You need clarity. The book, The Advantage, by Patrick Lencioni says, get clarity, communicate clarity, and reinforce clarity. I love that book. So the other thing is that without vision, people are just going to lack energy and drive to do anything. You want to change your congregation? It begins with you. It begins with leading with vision. And as you do that, remember the words of the Apostle Paul in Ephesians 3:20. God is able to do abundantly, exceedingly beyond what you ask or could even imagine or think. What is the problem? We're not thinking big enough, spiritual enough, Christ-like enough. So the key to the future is for us to have great dreams, biblical visions, informed by faith.